All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome inside Better Sports Network. A Better Morning. It's your host, Corey Parson, the fantasy executive. A Better Morning brought to you by Rival Fantasy. Rival Fantasy, your all-in-one fantasy sports platform. Coming up on the program today, AP Top 25 poll. First one of the year, second one of the year is released. We'll let you know where Coach Prime team falls into that mix. Got to get into a discussion about this hamstring specialist that Cooper Kupp is going to go see, not to mention the fact that we got to talk about the lead story going into the day. Yesterday, shortly after we got off the air, or maybe yesterday afternoon, it's yesterday evening time, we get the report that Travis Kelce, tight end extraordinaire, consensus first round fantasy football draft pick, has a hyperextended knee and will be looking to, be trying to get on the field, basically. So early reports today are that Kelce had the knee examined, checked out. There is no structural damage. He is going to test the knee a little bit later on today to see if he can give it a go tomorrow night. Once again, latest update, Kelce test out the knee, no structural damage. Kelce will look to test out the knee today. And then after Kelce tests out the knee today, he will be able to make a determination on what his deal is, his status is for Thursday night football. Now, with that being said, there's a different kind of way we got to take this. First of all, if you have Travis Kelce in fantasy, you got a chance to basically, sweat it out a little bit today as you go through the situation with Travis Kelce. Hopefully you have a solid backup. Now, that wide receiver room for the Kansas City Chiefs, if Kelce is out, could be an interesting place in daily fantasy contests on Rival Fantasy and whatnot. Now, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, you know all the names, and you know how I feel about those guys. You know what I'm saying? I'm not really big into that room right now. I think that every time you bring in these quarterbacks, these wide receivers, these young wide receivers to the Chiefs, they tend to not live up to fantasy expectations. We've done it before with DeMarcus Robinson and this guy and that guy and all of this stuff. But the truth of the matter is, when you break it down, it is about Patrick Mahomes. Because whatever happens is with Patrick Mahomes, if something's off with Kelce, then Mahomes has to step up. If something's off with Pacheco, then Mahomes has to step up. If something is off with anybody and it doesn't go well, Patrick Mahomes has to step up. So expect Patrick Mahomes tomorrow night, if Kelce is out, to shoulder more of the burden. Now, when you look at it from an ATS standpoint, obviously the Vegas markets reacted to this news right here. And the Vegas markets, basically, that number that was teetering on 7 dropped down through the 6.5, through the 5.5, all the way down to 4.5. Now, right now, the Kansas City Chiefs are a 4.5-point favorite in the home opener versus the Detroit Lions tomorrow night. Total still sitting at 52.5. Now, you don't want to overreact to spread movement. Now, I was leaning towards taking the points with the Lions before this news. Now you got a couple less points to take. So you got to take that into consideration. I have not made a final determination on where the wager would be yet. At 4.5, a banged up Kelce, that's a very good number, a very sharp number. It'll be interesting to see how that number plays out throughout the course of the day and as we get into tonight. Now, the Detroit Lions come into this game loose, free, easy, no pressure. Basically, the way that the Detroit Lions like to play. They really have no issue with coming out there and slinging that rock and gunning it out with the Kansas City Chiefs. It makes things a little bit easier for them. Now, what their defense has to realize is that without Kelce on the field, Mahomes is more than likely going to be more adept to take off and run. That's another good player prop that you might want to use tomorrow night, is basically the rushing over for Patrick Mahomes. Because in situations where Mahomes is, feels pressure, or his weapons ain't weaponing like they're normally supposed to, you don't have Tyreek Hill throwing up the peace sign no more. And if Kelce is hampered, it really falls on Mahomes. And these situations, we've seen where Patrick Mahomes will be willing to take off and run the football a little bit more. Now, the Lions are going to have to be wary of that. with that being said, I still think that number is right where it needs to be. It's pretty close. So I would continue to look at this game and monitor this one. I have a play for it for you tomorrow. Now, the other injury news that needs to be discussed and talked about, before I get to the injury news with Cooper Kupp, I want to talk about the fantasy implications if you're still have fantasy football drafts yet to go this season, right, before we get started. So I can report that last night in a couple of high-stakes leagues that I saw, Travis Kelce was going mid-second to the 2-3 turn. So about a full round to a round and a half drop-off in Travis Kelce. So he's going mid-second to the 2-3 turn. Now, you have to be risk-averse to take a tight end in the first round anyway. So if you're that guy, you're probably just as risk-averse to take Kelce in the middle of the second or on that 2-3 turn. Hell, you might look at it as a discount to get the top tight end, or really a guy who's a top stat producer in fantasy. So I'll keep that one going right there. Me, myself, personally, probably not going to have no Kelce, especially at this rate. Like, if I would have invested early and been one of the guys who was upset yesterday, and obviously they had good reasons to be upset, but I didn't have him anywhere, and obviously I'm not going to have him now. Probably only got about one more draft left, and I don't want to take a player who is 34 years old and shaky to start. You know, like I told you guys a couple weeks ago, Travis Kelce has been like 80 catches, 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns since 2015. That's a long time to be doing that. At some days, the wheels are going to come off. I'm not saying that just because of this injury, it's going to happen this season, but it is something to keep an eye on. But right now in fantasy drafts, from what I've seen, Travis Kelce in the middle of the second, all the way down to that 2-3 turn. Now, Cooper Kupp, another off-injured player who can be very dominant statistical, he has slid down to like that 3-4 turn. Kupp, a much different story than what Travis Kelce is. Kupp is consistently injured, and these injuries have hampered his fantasy production for really the most part of his career. He had that one dominant fantasy year. Then after that, he got off to an excellent start last year. But Cooper Kupp continues to try to, he breaks down a lot on teams. And you don't want to deal with that too much when you're in fantasy football, right? Like, you got a guy that you drafted that early. You want to make sure you get him out there. And Cooper Kupp, that can be an issue. Then take into the fact that the Rams are a team that may go into tank mode at some point this year, so they could pull Kupp anyway. Kupp is very high risk, high reward in fantasy drafts right now. You know what he can give you if he pops, but if he doesn't, then it's a wasted draft pick, a guy that could be on your bench and have another down season from Cooper Kupp fantasy-wise. Now, one of the other issues that a few people are talking about, but this absence of Chris Jones from the Kansas City Chiefs defense may be more important than the absence of Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Now, when you look at that situation with Travis Kelce, there's an offensive player who the game plan is specifically built around. Chris Jones is a defensive player that can wreck your game plan. A dominant three technique. Guys like Quinnen Williams, Aaron Donald. These are dudes that get off the ball, they get in the paint, they create a lot of havoc for opposing quarterbacks. This is the kind of pass rusher, the kind of defender that gives Jared Goff, and not just Jared Goff, but most quarterbacks in the NFL a ton of trouble when you can get in the paint and affect them right in their face like that. We've seen the Giants beat Tom Brady twice like that. As a matter of fact, every time a team loses the Super Bowl, it's because the opposing tackle got in the paint and disrupted the passing game. So that's not going to be available for the Chiefs tomorrow night. So I think that Jared Goff, St. Brown, that whole offense in Detroit is going to be up for the test, and I think they're going to be flying. I think missing Chris Jones, because I don't see him signing today and getting on the field tomorrow. I think missing Chris Jones could ultimately end up being a bigger absence than Travis Kelce, because on the offense, Patrick Mahomes, a true franchise quarterback, when the other players get hurt, he steps up. On the defense, there is nobody really to step up to fill that void that Chris Jones leaves. So it looks more and more like I'm going to be back in the Lions, even at that 4.5. But it's interesting to see how that number fluctuates. Chris Jones, in my opinion, makes more, is more, has more say on the line in this game than Travis Kelce would. That may seem out of sort, but that's the way I think the situation plays out as we move down the stretch and get ready for kickoff of the NFL season. Now, college football news, we'll get to that in just a second. But before we do that, I want to tell you, don't forget, start that 7-day free trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription and get the Fantasy Football Draft Guide and Cheat Sheet for free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/draft. Once again, that is time to start that 7-day free trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription and get the Fantasy Football Draft Guide and Cheat Sheet for free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/draft. All right, AP Top 25 poll released yesterday, and obviously, I don't know, I guess everything in college football is bigger this year, right? Because obviously the addition of Coach Prime and all the attention that's been given to him. Now, when you look at these rankings, there's a couple teams I want to focus on. I want to talk about Florida State. They move up to number 4 in the rankings. I want to talk about Notre Dame. They move up to number 10 in the rankings. And then obviously we'll start the conversation with TCU moving up to 22 after being previously unranked. Now, traditionally, when a team first enters the top 25, it's an auto fade for me. A team comes to the top 25, Colorado moved up to 22. So what ends up happening is it becomes an auto fade for me when that team moves into the bottom half of the top 25, because that's kind of when they let their guard down, they get a little bit happy, and that's also when bettors start to flock to them. Now, I don't think that Colorado has to worry about that. I think a home game after what happened last week, that environment in Boulder this weekend is going to be raucous. So I see Colorado coming out there, getting the job done, successfully laying a 3.5-point spread. What is so interesting about Colorado right now and Coach Prime, not only have they taken over college football, they've taken over the sports world. They've taken over football, period. There is more spread bets on Colorado going into this weekend than it is all 32 NFL teams. Like, you don't understand how significant that is. There is more money being placed, more tickets and more bets being placed on the Colorado Buffaloes at this point of the week than there is all 32 NFL teams. The Dallas Cowboys are playing this weekend. The Pittsburgh Steelers are playing this weekend. The Green Bay Packers are playing this weekend. The Vegas Raiders, right there in Las Vegas, playing this weekend. Yet, everybody is going to the window to wager on the Colorado Buffaloes. That is unbelievable right there. Coach Prime definitely getting it done, definitely drawing a lot of attention to his program, and definitely has a lot of people rooting for him. And obviously, it's showing almost everywhere. You know, Coach Prime is so good for business. Like, whatever your business you're in, Coach Prime is good for it, right? If you're in the media, he brings ratings, he brings clicks, he's good to talk about. You know, if you're in the sports betting arena, he brings people to the window. People are intrigued, people are interested with Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, Shedeur Sanders, and this team. So that is a phenomenally interesting stat, that there is more money on Colorado than it is on any of the 32 NFL teams going into this weekend. And this is a Pac-12 school that won a game last year. Florida State. Now, let's go to Notre Dame first. I'm so impressed with Notre Dame. And I understand they really haven't had a chance to really show you what they're about yet. Now, this weekend, they're in Raleigh. They go to NC State, which I always thought Notre Dame never traveled. It seemed like they always play at home. But this weekend, they're right up the road here in Raleigh to take on North Carolina State. This is going to be a bit of a test for Sam Hartman, Coach Freeman, and the Fighting Irish. You got to go on the road. Weather will be a factor. This time of year down here in the South, weather is going to be a factor. So you need to show your conditioning, and you need to continue to show that you can play that defense well, and Sam Hartman needs to continue to get it done. Like, if you don't have a Sam Hartman Heisman ticket in your profile, you need to get one, because a Notre Dame quarterback, if he can get rolling, and that PR machine that the Fighting Irish possess, They got a television network, for Christ's sake, for the Fighting Irish. If they can get that steam rolling, he can be a guy that can really challenge Caleb Williams for that Heisman Trophy, along with Michael Penix, Hunter, and Shador, and other guys. Hartman is right there in the mix. He's the reason why I think Notre Dame has a chance to be a team to play in the college football playoffs this year. Right now, they're up to 10. They have a schedule where they can do it. They still got to go to Clemson. Now, Clemson may be trash, right? They may be trash. But maybe Clemson turns it around, and that loss in week 1 is not as bad. That's going to be a big-time win for Notre Dame. And they still got USC and Ohio State on the schedule as well, amongst others. So if they can come out as a one-loss independent as Notre Dame, it's going to be hard to keep them out of the college football playoff. Like I say, that PR machine that is Notre Dame gets rolling. So I'm going to keep an eye on them this season. That kickoff versus North Carolina State is at noon on Saturday. That's going to be one of the big games of the weekend. Now, obviously, the biggest game of college football this weekend takes place on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa when the Texas Longhorn goes down there to visit Alabama. Latest number I saw, Alabama was laying 7.5. That's a very intriguing number right there, because I know a lot of people are saying they're on Texas, and why wouldn't you take Texas at 7.5 with the hook? But I can see some Alabama money coming in on Saturday morning or Saturday evening. It always sounds cool to bet against Alabama until you got to give the ticket taker your money and give that and say, I want the team opposing Alabama. That's different than talking about it. The actual action of doing it can leave a pit in your stomach. Trust me, I know. So that's going to be the good college game this weekend. Really going to spend the rest of the week breaking down and getting ready for Thursday and Sunday in the NFL. But I may touch on that game again before the weekend gets here. But hard to handicap that one right now. But I'm telling you, some Notre Dame money. Some Alabama money is going to come in before kickoff. Florida State moves up to number 4 in the rankings. Florida State, they look tough. Like, what I like about what I saw with Florida State is they took the game from LSU. And LSU, a team I thought was going to be able to compete for a national championship this year. And I still do think they compete for a national championship. But I got to think that Florida State's in that mix as well. And obviously the pollsters do too, because they moved them all the way up to number 4 in the rankings. Big time win. Clemson doesn't look good. You got enough on your schedule. I believe they may play Notre Dame at some point this year too. You got enough on your schedule to where you can be very competitive and win some big games. They got to play good, because they coach ain't Coach Pride. They would look foolish if they wasn't, because that's the job of Deion Warner, and you see what he's doing. But Mike Norvell is getting this done. He got his team up to number 4. You got to like the transfer portal wide receivers, Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman. Jordan Travis looked very good in the debut versus LSU. And like I say, the team just looks tough. When you have big-time goal line stands, Florida State had 2 in that game. When you have big-time goal line stands like that, that shows you that you got some dogs on that team and that they're not going to quit. So I look for the Florida State Seminoles to be a problem for big-time college football programs, particularly in the ACC this year. And as you move throughout the course of that schedule, we'll see what they're about. But right now, I'm feeling pretty good about the Seminoles. And before we get up out of here and send you on to your day and get you ready for the rest of the programming schedule right here on the Better Sports Network. As a matter of fact, Sportstopia Fire and Ice MLB is coming up next with Chris Crawford and Sarah Sanchez. So you want to get in there and involve that new programming from Sportstopia. But I do want to touch on right quick, Chris Mortensen, the great ESPN insider broadcaster, announced his retirement. You know, Chris Mortensen was a guy that's been there kind of from the beginning, doing that insider role that Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport have made famous now. But guys like, Chris Mortensen was kind of had that role in the beginning, going from place to place. We saw him get involved with fantasy throughout the course of his career. So shout out to Chris Mortensen on his retirement. Definitely enjoyed his NFL insights throughout the course of his career over there on the worldwide leader of sports entertainment. I want to thank each and every one of you for checking in, rocking with your boy, the Fantasy Executive, for a good minute this morning. Don't forget to go check out Rival Fantasy. That's the all-in-one fantasy sports platform. They'll get you right over there. Telling the people at the Better Sports Network sent you. For Heather Klein, it's Corey Parson, the fantasy